Whispers in the shadows. The moon hung low in the sky, a mere sliver of silver light that barely pierced through the dense canopy of gnarled branches above. It was a night like no other in the dark hollow forest, where the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Despite the chill, young Rowan had ventured into the heart of the forest, drawn by whispers of tales as ancient as the trees themselves, tales of spirits that roamed the woods, guardians and wraiths intertwined in an eternal dance. Rowan had always been one for stories, the kind that curled around your mind and held you captive long after the last syllable faded. Yet, standing here now, layers of darkness wrapped around him like a shroud, he felt the weight of the silence pressing down like a hand on his chest. The only sounds came from the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze and the scattered scurrying of nocturnal critters. Yet these sounds only heightened his acute awareness of the encroaching shadows. His flashlight beam danced sporadically over the underbrush, revealing the twisted roots and patches of moss that carpeted the ground. But with every flicker of light, the shadows seemed to stretch, elongating to monstrous proportions before collapsing back into themselves. It was a game of perception, and Rowan was its unwilling participant, yet the thrill coursing through him was intoxicating. Every urban legend told in hushed tones at the edge of campfires flooded back to his mind. Stepping deeper into the forest felt like a rite of passage. He had heard the warnings from the older townsfolk more times than he could count. Stay away from the heart of Dark Hollow. They spoke of creatures whose eyes glimmered like embers, of laughter that danced on the wind, and of paths that twisted back on themselves, leading the unsuspecting deeper into madness. Can the forest really be alive? He thought. Or is it just the fears of those who dare not tread here? With a determined breath, he pressed on. Rowan's heart pounded in his chest as he felt the energy of the forest shift. Shadows danced just beyond his sight, and he could not shake the growing feeling of being watched. He stopped to listen, tuning his senses to the world around him, only to find that the forest had grown eerily still. Rustle of the wind was gone, replaced by a tension that crackled through the air. That's when he heard it. A soft, haunting sigh that floated through the trees, wrapping around him like a vine. It whispered his name. "Rowan?" He turned sharply, shining the beam of his flashlight in the direction of the sound. The beam cut through the darkness, but instead of dispelling the shadows, it seemed to deepen them, like a shroud pulling tighter around something hidden. "Hello?" he called, forcing steadiness into his voice, though it trembled at the edges. His mind raced through the possibilities: an animal, a trick of the wind, or maybe, just maybe, the whispers of the forest spirits the old folk spoke of. The answer came in the form of a rustling nearby, followed by a soft giggle, a sound so unsettling it sent chills racing down his spine. It was a child's giggle, light and playful, yet there was something inherently wrong about it, like a melody sung in a minor key. "Who's there?" he demanded, feeling foolish but resolute. His voice echoed off the trees, fading away into silence, as if the forest itself disapproved of his inquiry. Then the giggle came again, a little louder this time, followed by the soft sound of footsteps, barely perceptible over the crunch of dried leaves. Panic mixed with curiosity in his veins. He should turn back. He should run. But the thrill of discovery anchored him in place, deeper than the roots of the oldest trees surrounding him. The flashlight flickered, sputtered, and then died, leaving him engulfed in darkness. He cursed under his breath, fumbling for the spare batteries in his pocket. As he fished them out, he couldn't shake the sensation that the darkness had thickened, the shadows closing in, hushing his movements like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his eye, and he snapped his head in its direction, his heart racing. Briefly illuminated by a flicker of moonlight, he glimpsed a figure, a small silhouette darting between the trees. It was quick, like a spark of life in the oppressive gloom. "Wait!" he shouted, the words echoing back at him, unanswered. Catching his breath, Rowan took off, pushing through the underbrush where the figure had vanished. "Hello!" he called again, more desperate now, the eerie quiet only broken by the sound of his own footfalls crunching against the forest floor. But as he ran, a deep unease settled into the pit of his stomach. The laughter echoed in his mind, haunting and laced with malice. Each step he took led him deeper into the woods, and the path seemed to shift without his consent. Trees tall as towers blocked any sense of direction, their twisted branches, skeletal fingers reaching for him from all sides. Suddenly, he stopped. Before him stood a clearing, moonlight spilling across the ground like silvery silk. In its center was what appeared to be a circle of stones, crudely shaped and darkened with age. Rowan approached cautiously, something in his gut warning him against the move. The air was charged with an energy that thrummed against his skin, making every hair on his body stand at attention. As he reached the edge of the circle, the laughter returned, a chorus of haunting giggles that danced just out of reach, flitting between the trees like fireflies. The air grew heavy, and he felt as though 1,000 eyes were boring into him from the shadows beyond. Rowan hesitated, but the allure of the unknown pulled him closer. His heart raced as he stepped inside the circle of stones, the ground feeling warmer beneath his feet, as if the earth itself was alive. It felt inviting, a soft caress that sent shivers up his spine. Then, as if beckoned by an unseen force, the stones began to hum, vibrating with an otherworldly energy. He gasped, stumbling backward, the sound washing over him, whispers, laughter, and an echo of emotions that felt both joyous and sorrowful. Dark shapes darted around the edges of his vision, flickering like shadows in the corner of light. "Join us, Rowan!" The giggle was almost sing-song, eerily sweet. "We're waiting for you." Panic surged through him, and he turned to run, but the forest twisted in response. Trees bent and the undergrowth seemed to seize his legs, pulling him downward. Rowan's heart raced as he fought against the vines that wound around him like icy fingers, drawing him back toward the circle. And then, just as abruptly, the laughter stopped. Silence enveloped him, a suffocating blanket that pressed against his ears. The shadows held their breath. Rowan's pulse thundered in his veins as he twisted in place, straining against the darkness that had suddenly grown denser. "Let me go!" he shouted, his voice raw with fear. And just like that, as if the forest had heard him, the grip released. With a frantic rush of adrenaline, he burst free, scrambling back toward the path. His sole focus was survival. The forest had changed. Branches bowed low, twisting in unnatural angles as he dashed through the underbrush. He could hear them now, the whispers gaining intensity, echoing through the branches. They called to him, beckoning him to return. But he knew he could not succumb. Rowan ran, clutching his flashlight, desperate for the edge of the forest and the safety of the town that lay beyond, but the path he had thought he knew wound endlessly, leading him further into the maze of trees and shadows. The unsettling feeling of being pursued sank into his bones as the laughter rose again, a cacophony of voices teasing and tormenting him. "Come play with us, Rowan," the shadows whispered. "You're one of us now. Return and join our game." With every wretched giggle that danced on the wind, an icy realization settled over him. This was no ordinary evening in the forest. This was a night where the very essence of the woods came alive, a night wrapped in